On Christmas Eve, 1945, a family home in West Virginia burned to the ground. Inside, 5 children were believed to be trapped. But when the embers finally cooled and the smoke cleared, an impossible, chilling truth was revealed. There were no bodies, no bones, no trace of the children at all. It was as if they had simply vanished into the smoke. This single night would spark one of the most haunting and enduring mysteries in American history. This is the story of the Sodder children and the fire that left behind only questions. George and Jenny Sodder lived a humble life in Fayetteville, West Virginia, with their 10 children. They weren't wealthy, but they were a close-knit, well-known Italian-American family. George, an immigrant, ran his own trucking business, and they had built their simple 2-story home with their own hands. It was a house filled with the noise and life of a large, loving family. As December 1945 rolled in, the home was buzzing with the excitement of Christmas. On Christmas Eve, the atmosphere was warm and festive. It was the kind of ordinary, safe night that you never think to remember. That evening, the older Sodder kids, who had already opened a few gifts, begged to stay up later to play with their new toys. Jenny agreed, and 5 of them, Morris, Martha, Louie, Jenny, and Betty, remained downstairs as the rest of the family went to bed. No one could have imagined that this would be the last normal night they would ever experience together. Just after midnight, the quiet of the house was broken. Jenny Sodder was woken by a strange sound, a loud thump on the roof, followed by what sounded like something rolling down. Confused, she got up and checked the house. The lights were still on, the doors were locked, and everything seemed peaceful. Assuming it was nothing, she went back to sleep. But less than an hour later, she woke up again, this time to a thick, acrid smell. The house was filling with smoke. When she opened her bedroom door, she was met with a wall of flames, roaring up from the ground floor. Panic set in. George and Jenny scrambled to wake the children they could reach. They managed to get 4 of them outside into the freezing night air, but 5 were still trapped in the attic bedrooms upstairs. The central staircase was now a raging inferno, completely impassable. The heat was unbearable, the smoke suffocating. George, desperate, tried to find a way to his children. He ran outside to grab the heavy wooden ladder that was always kept propped against the side of the house, but it was gone. It had vanished from its usual spot. His next thought was his 2 coal trucks. He could drive them close to the house and climb on top to reach the attic windows. He jumped into the first truck and turned the key. Nothing. He tried the second truck. Same result. Both vehicles, which had been working perfectly just the day before, were dead. As precious minutes ticked by, the fire grew, consuming the wooden structure with terrifying speed. Soon the roof groaned and collapsed, and the entire house came crashing down. By morning, the Sodder family home was reduced to a smoldering pile of ash and debris. The immediate assumption from everyone in the small town was that the 5 children had tragically perished in the blaze. It was the only logical, albeit heartbreaking, explanation. But as the ashes were sifted through, the mystery only deepened. Nothing was found. No bodies, no bones, not even a single tooth or bone fragment. The fire chief on the scene offered a simple but strange explanation. The fire had been so intensely hot that it had completely cremated the bodies. George Sodder couldn't accept this. He had seen house fires before and knew that they almost always left remains. Jenny, who had worked as a nurse, was equally skeptical. She called a contact at a local crematorium to ask if it was possible. The worker confirmed her fears. Human bones are incredibly resilient. It takes a furnace reaching 2,000 degrees for over 2 hours to reduce bones to ash. Their wooden house had burned for less than an hour. It simply didn't add up. As the days turned into weeks, the family's grief was slowly overshadowed by a growing, nagging suspicion. They started piecing together strange events that had happened in the months leading up to the fire. A stranger had once come to the house looking for work and, while leaving, pointed to their fuse boxes, ominously warning George that they would cause a fire someday. George, who had just had the wiring checked and knew it was safe, dismissed him. Even more chillingly, another man had tried aggressively to sell the family life insurance on their children. When George adamantly refused, the man had become enraged and spat out a threat that now echoed in George's mind. "Your goddamn house is going up in smoke, and your children are going to be destroyed." At the time, George brushed it off as the words of an angry salesman. Now it felt like a prophecy. More strange details from the night of the fire began to surface. Jenny remembered getting a bizarre phone call just after midnight. A woman with a strange, mocking laugh had asked for a name Jenny didn't recognize. The line then went dead. One of their daughters, Marion, later recalled seeing her sister Betty still awake on the couch downstairs shortly before the fire, even though Betty was supposed to be in bed. It seems she may have let someone into the house. The investigation, or lack thereof, only fueled the family's doubts. A telephone repairman confirmed that their phone line hadn't been burned in the fire. It had been cleanly cut deliberately. The missing ladder was eventually discovered, thrown in a ditch about 75 feet away from the house. A bus driver who passed through town late that night came forward to say he had seen people throwing what he described as balls of fire at the house. Years later, a local minister, sifting through the debris, found a small, hard, rubbery object that was identified as a pineapple-style hand grenade, the kind used as an incendiary bomb. This was no accident. This was an attack. In 1949, 4 years after the fire, the Sodders, having never given up, persuaded a pathologist to conduct a proper excavation of the site. The dig uncovered several small bone fragments. Hope mixed with dread as they were sent to the Smithsonian Institution for analysis. The report that came back was a bombshell. The fragments were indeed human vertebrae, but they belonged to a single individual, aged between 16 and 22. The oldest missing Sodder child was only 14. More importantly, the report stated the bones showed no signs of ever being exposed to fire. They had likely been brought in with the dirt George used to fill the basement crater and create a memorial garden for his children. The official story had completely crumbled. The question was no longer asterisk how asterisk the children died, but asterisk where asterisk were they? George and Jenny devoted their lives to finding the answer. They erected a large, heartbreaking billboard on Route 16 with the pictures of their 5 missing children, offering a substantial reward for any information. They traveled the country, following up on every tip and supposed sighting. Reports trickled in for years. People claimed to have seen the children in a car with strangers on the night of the fire, or at a hotel in South Carolina, or serving food in a St. Louis restaurant. Each lead brought a surge of hope, only to end in another dead end. Then, in 1967, more than 20 years after the fire, a letter arrived for Jenny. The postmark was from Kentucky, and there was no return address. Inside was a photograph of a young man in his mid-20s. The facial features, the dark, curly hair, the distinctively arched eyebrows, he bore a striking resemblance to her son Louis, who would have been about that age. On the back of the photo, a cryptic, handwritten message read, Louis Sodder, our loved brother Frankie. The family was electrified. Was this the proof they had been waiting for? They hired another private investigator to look into the new lead. He took their money, promised results, and then promptly disappeared, never to be heard from again. Once more, the trail went cold. George Sodder passed away in 1969, never knowing what became of his children. He went to his grave believing they had been kidnapped, possibly in retaliation for his outspoken anti-Mussolini views, which had made him unpopular in the heavily Italian-American community. Jenny, heartbroken but resolute, wore black for the rest of her life. She maintained the memorial garden and the billboard, a constant public plea for answers. She passed away in 1989, and the remaining Sodder children finally took the weathered sign down. Today, the site of the house is just an empty plot of land. The billboard is gone. But the mystery of what happened on that cold Christmas Eve remains as potent as ever. Were the 5 Sodder children consumed by a freakishly intense fire that left no trace? Or were they stolen away into the night, living out their lives under new names, forever separated from the family that never stopped searching for them? All that's left is the ghost of a fire and a question that has never gone out. Thanks for watching. This case is over, but the truth is not. The next story is already waiting, and it's darker than you think. Stay with NightCase Chronicle. I'll see you in the next case.